Contrary to what a lot of you think, I am not an anti-vaxxer, even though I may come across as one. Go through all my timelines on Twitter and whatever. You'll never hear me propose anything anti-vaccine. Not a single time. Because I trust the research. And then my niece drops this off on my desk and I'm thinking, I might have to rethink my position on this. The headline says it all. People who skip their COVID vaccine are at higher risk of traffic accidents, according to a new study. Now, Johnny, this is serious. Take this seriously. This is COVID. Lives are at stake. No, stop it. Stop it. I know that the research is funny, but it's still not a laughing matter. People, according to this article, people who skip their COVID vaccine are at a higher risk of traffic accidents. Oh, no. You got to be kidding me. You got to be kidding me. Well, we're actually going to read the research study itself. Aaron Prater, who's listed there, is just the person who wrote about the study. The first thing that came to my mind was, well, whoever wrote the headline probably got it wrong. That's what headline writers do. I mean, they're trying to sell newspapers or get high clicks, and so they take a normal article and they kind of juice it up a little bit. But after reading the article, no, I think this is pretty accurate. Yeah, we're going to look at the research published by these three buffoons and have a good time. Hello out there. I am trying to get through.
With his powerful brainwaves cradled in the warmth of reasoning, it's time for Johnny Walker Dread to straighten you out on a thing or two. Emanating all the way from exciting Las Vegas, Oklahoma, it's the Johnny Walker Dread Show.
Here is the original article published in the American Journal of Medicine, which up until this time was actually a well-regarded journal. Probably not so much anymore. Who are the authors? Donald A. Redelmeyer, Jonathan Wang, and Diva Thurulshavan. Let's dive in, and it doesn't take long for the hilarity to begin. Well, one of the first things I want to do is find out who paid for this. And the original PDF I showed you, which was the actual original article, doesn't contain that information. Instead, I had to kind of dig for it, but I found it. It's right down here. It states, this project was supported by a Canada Research Chair in Medical Decision Sciences, the Canadian Institute of Health Research, the Graduate Diploma in Health Research at the University of Toronto, and the National Science and Engineering Research Council of Canada. Guys, this was a government-funded study. Yep. And it states here, conflict of interest. The funding organization had no role in the design and conduct of the study. So, management, analysis, and interpretation of the data, or preparation, review, and approval of the manuscript. So what? You're paying for the research. The researchers know who butters their bread. And yes, it is true if their research had been, let's say, pro-anti-vaxxer, that they still would have been able to submit the paper for publication. But the American Journal of Medicine would not have published it, and they would never have gotten another dime from these government agencies for any future research. They know that. I know that a lot of you think that, oh no, our government would never do anything like that. Well, American government, like the National Science Foundation, wouldn't have acted like this, but this is Canada. They absolutely would have refused to fund these dudes if they had come up with research that was contrary to the government's wishes. Don't be naive. Now, you may be thinking, hey, not a problem. I can go in and duplicate this and confirm their findings, right? No. It states here, data availability. The study dataset is held securely in coded form at the Institute for Clinical Evaluation Sciences. The government. While legal data sharing agreements between ICES and data providers, example, healthcare organizations and government, prohibit ICS from making the dataset publicly available, access may be granted to those who meet criteria for confidential access. So in other words, if you want access to the data, forget it. They're not going to give it to you. The government got the publication that it wanted. It's not going to give access to anybody trying to replicate the studies. The full dataset creation plan and analytical code are all available from the authors. So they'll give you the code that they use to crunch the data. They're not going to give you the data. So they call it vaccine hesitancy, right? And according to this, it's a reflection of psychology that might also contribute to traffic safety. All right, hang on. Now, here are the results. A total of 11 million plus individuals were included, of whom 16% had not received a COVID vaccine and 84% had received the vaccine. The cohort accounted for 6,682 traffic crashes during follow-up. Unvaccinated individuals accounted for 1,682 traffic crashes, 25%, equal to a 70% increased relative risk compared with those vaccinated. And of course, they have a 95% confidence interval. That's coming from the standard error. A lot more I could talk about that. But what that essentially means is that if you did this study, let's say 1,000 times, the averages that they obtained would fall between 63 and 82%, 95% of the time. The p-value there being less than 0.001 essentially means that they have discarded or rejected the null hypothesis. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get into that. We'll see. The increased traffic risks among unvaccinated individuals extended to diverse subgroups, was similar to the relative risk associated with sleep apnea and was equal to a 48% increase after adjustments for age, sex, home location, socioeconomic status, and medical diagnoses. Now, here's the issue. They didn't adjust for all of those at the same time. They only adjusted for one at a time. You're going to see that that has a huge impact on the results of their study. The increased risk extended across the spectrum of crash severity. Yeah, hold on here. Put on your seatbelts. They're coming in with some really shocking information here for you. It states, motor vehicle crashes are a common cause of sudden death, brain injury, spinal damage, skeletal fractures, chronic pain, and other disabling conditions. Amazing. I never would have figured that. Crash risks occur as a complication of several diseases, including alcohol misuse. Yes, if you abuse alcohol, you might get into a car crash. Sleep apnea. If you fall asleep at the wheel, you might get into a car crash. And diabetes. Oh, this is good. Crashes also occur in patients with controlled hypertension, prior cancer, or no disease at all. In other words, it's happened before. I mean, I know this is shocking to you, but it is absolutely true that car crashes involve sometimes people who don't have a disease. Now, you may have figured that at one point, but now you have the word of an expert. The proximate causes of most crashes are human behaviors, including speeding, inattention, tailgating, impairment, improper passing, disobeying a signal, failing to yield right-of-way, or other infractions. The amazing thing is that the authors are citing these. Like, for example, the fact that you don't have to have a disease to get into a car crash, they cited the source for that. Because I know one thing, I'm going to check on that. What do you mean that people who don't have a disease sometimes get in car crashes? I had better check this thing out. And what is this crap about speeding and tailgating and inattention sometimes causing car crashes? I'd better check the sources. Oh, dudes, come on, man. You guys are researchers. You should know better than this. You don't need to cite the obvious. No one is going to discount any of this. And in fact, you shouldn't have even bother to write this. This is just fluff. It means nothing. Everybody knows this stuff. These behaviors might partially reflect health consciousness, safety-mindedness, community spirit, okay, or other psychological characteristics that are difficult to measure in a systematic manner. So community spirit is now a psychological characteristic. In other words, if you volunteer to help your community, hey, you might have a problem. Vaccine hesitancy or confidence is not new. For example, the original polio vaccine required multifactorial efforts, including celebrity endorsements. And they talk about Elvis Presley. The amazing thing is that they cite 3 sources to confirm that. Really? I mean, come on, just one source would have done it. Nobody is going to discount this, guys. One source would have been plenty. Let's skip on down. COVID vaccination is an objective, available, important, authenticated, and timely indicator of human behavior. Really, it's objective, albeit in a domain separate from motor vehicle crashes. Yeah, that's true, very separate. Whether COVID vaccination is associated with an increased traffic risk, however, has not been tested for a good reason. Nobody was stupid enough to even do this before. But that didn't stop these guys. Oh, man. This is just sad.
Look out for the dummies. There's a million and more.
I mean, it's so pathetic. I mean, letting these guys publish this article is kind of like allowing that, special ed kid to score the touchdown in the game, where the defenders all kind of lay over flat and let him score. I mean, that's what they must have looked at this like, okay, come on, guys, what do? We really don't want to break their hearts, do we? Let's go ahead and publish it. I did check, by the way, this is not an April 1st edition. Instead, we theorize that individual adults who tend to resist public health recommendations might also neglect basic road safety guidelines. Yeah, because they're like the same thing, I suppose. The study question was, does COVID vaccine hesitancy correlate with the risk of a serious traffic crash? And right off the bat, I'm going to complain about one thing here. All right? Up until we had the vaccine, there was no vaccine. The treatment group here is the vaccinated, not the unvaccinated. The question should have been posed, does getting the COVID vaccine make you a safer driver? And if they had posed it that way, the hilarity would have been obvious. Well, it still is, but even more obvious. And so you can't treat being non-vaccinated as a treatment group, but that's what they're doing. I mean, ultimately, this is about whether if you get the vaccine, you must become a safer driver. And nobody buys that. Methods. Study setting. Ontario is the most popular province of Canada, and this is a Canadian article, and I'm going to have a lot to talk about with that when it comes to that. And it talks about the number of residents in 2021. We don't care. The yearly crash risk was 2% for an average adult. Minor incidences included. Really? So you're able to count minor incidences like those that didn't even have the cops called? Wow. Okay. Or didn't have any insurance claims on them? Pretty amazing. The minimum driving age was 16 years, and novice drivers initially received beginner licenses. The COVID vaccine became available in winter 2020. Doses were widely delivered to adults by spring of 2021. An uptake had plateaued in summer 2021. Okay, and it lists the 4 vaccines. We don't care. We identified individuals using encrypted identifiers from official government registries. All right, they got into their medical records. This is Canada, right? And in Canada, I mean, any rights you have are just simply what the government feels like giving you. We included adults aged 18 years or more on July 31st, 2021, to ensure that each was eligible for a regular driver's license and a COVID vaccine. That's reasonable. So we'll skip on down. It says, our study was not a randomized trial. A lot of people have said, well, that's a serious problem with it. Not really. They are actually including everybody in the population in this study. In other words, they didn't do any sampling here. So they're not really restricted to using a randomized trial.